Have you ever given everything to your family, your savings, your trust, your whole damn heart, only to realize they've erased you the moment you needed them? I woke up in a hospital bed with no one beside me. Not my son, not his wife, just a nurse telling me my insurance was denied. That's when I found out my entire retirement fund had vanished. They took it all to fund her company and called me selfish when I asked for help. But the twist, they didn't count on my daughter. She's 13, quiet, brilliant, and she's about to make them pay. Not with anger, but with precision. The emergency room lights flickered above me like dying stars. My fingers trembled as I reached for my phone, heart racing not from the accident, but from something deeper, raw, invisible betrayal. I typed with my good hand, "Savannah, I had an accident. They need someone here, please." Sent at 2:07 a.m., delivered, read, no reply. A nurse hovered beside me, her eyes soft but urgent. "Ma'am, if there are complications, we'll need someone to sign consent, a next of kin." I gave her Savannah's number, my baby sister, the girl I used to walk to school every morning, whose scraped knees I bandaged when Mom was too tired. The nurse returned 10 minutes later. We tried calling, no answer. Then she hesitated, studying me. "That woman, Savannah, she looks familiar. She's been here before, hasn't she?" I blinked. I don't know." She walked away before I could ask more. Pain throbbed through my shoulder, my chest burned. But it wasn't just the accident. It was the knowledge that I had no one. At least, no one who would show up for me anymore. My sister used to be different. Or maybe I used to be too blind. There was a time when Savannah would throw her arms around me without hesitation. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world that mattered. At family dinners, she'd lean close and whisper compliments in your ear, warm and syrupy. "You're the strongest person I know, Mel." Or, "You're the reason I haven't lost my mind in this family." But always, there came the knife. "I mean, you do overthink everything. Remember how you panicked over that $200 bill? God, you're dramatic." Slice. "Of course you're tired. Teaching 3rd grade isn't exactly rocket science." Twist. She'd hug me while her words bled into my bones. Looking back, I see it wasn't love. It was performance. A rehearsed affection designed to keep me hooked. She needed me emotionally dependent, so I wouldn't question when she slowly drained pieces of me, favor by favor, lie by lie. And I let her. I remember the day of our father's funeral. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing so violently the entire chapel fell silent. People murmured how close we were, how lucky I was to have such a devoted sister. She didn't let go for nearly 5 minutes. 3 days later, she withdrew $4,000 from the joint savings account we'd set up to take care of Mom. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Oh, come on, Mel. You know I'll pay it back. Don't be such a martyr." She never did. The audience of my life never saw those scenes. Only the ones where Savannah called me the glue of the family or posted selfies of us on Instagram with captions like, "My rock, my sister, my everything." It took me years to realize love wasn't supposed to feel like guilt wrapped in hugs. There were things she said that stayed with me. Words that sounded like concern but left bruises. I wonder if you've heard them too. "I'm just being honest. Someone has to tell you the truth, right? I only worry about you because I love you. No one else will say it. You make it so hard to help you. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke. You always need saving, Mel. You've always been the dramatic one. Do any of those sound familiar? I bet they do. Trauma doesn't always come wrapped in fists. Sometimes it arrives in familiar faces, in warm arms, in gentle voices that whisper your weaknesses back to you until you start to believe them. In that hospital bed, staring at the screen where Savannah read your message, glowed like a scar, I felt something inside me crack. Not rage, not even grief. It was silence. The quiet acceptance that I had let myself believe I mattered. That night didn't just change my medical file, it rewrote the story of who I was to my family. And as I lay there, waiting for a nurse, a doctor, anyone to tell me I could leave or live or just be, I promised myself this. If no one would fight for me, I would learn to fight smarter, even if I had to start from the very pit of broken. Reunions are supposed to be warm, nostalgic. But standing in that school gymnasium, under dim string lights and the smell of catered lasagna, I felt like a ghost. Faces I hadn't seen in 20 years smiled, laughed, hugged. I tried to do the same, until Julie Patel, Julie from chemistry, grinned and said, "Melissa, I saw on Facebook your son is killing it with that startup. Heard he's supporting the whole family now. You must be so proud." I managed a smile, a nod. "Yeah," I said, "he's doing well." It wasn't a lie, just not the truth either. I went home to silence. Emily was already asleep, her lamp still on, a graphic novel draped across her chest. I tucked her in quietly, brushing the curls off her forehead. Then I noticed the envelope on the floor near the front door. Bank statement. I stood at the kitchen counter with it in my hands for 10 minutes before I opened it. 0. My retirement account balance was 0. No pending transactions, no holds, no errors, gone. It didn't make sense. There was no phone call, no letter, nothing. I'd logged in just 6 weeks ago to check on it, after the hospital bills started piling up, and it was still intact, but now it was wiped clean. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I sat down at the table and stared at the wall until the sun came up. That morning, Emily found me asleep, upright, with my arms crossed and my head tilted awkwardly. She touched my shoulder gently. "Mom?" I opened my eyes and smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't touch your soul. "Good morning, sweetheart. Want pancakes?" Emily didn't answer. She just looked at me like she was seeing something I couldn't. Later that day, after school, she wrote in her journal, "If I don't do something, my mom will disappear right in front of me, and no one will even notice she's gone." It would be a while before she showed me those words. She didn't ask for permission, she just acted. Emily told me she was taking a cyber safety class for teens. Ew, it was free, hosted by a local nonprofit, she said. I was proud of her, how responsible, how forward-thinking. I had no idea what she was actually doing. She was teaching herself how to dig, not hacking, but navigating through forgotten links, password resets, cloud data footprints. She borrowed my laptop when I was at work, found an old email I hadn't touched in years, and traced it to a digital portal I didn't know existed anymore. That's where she found it. Melissa Harper, listed as a guarantor on 2 business loans for a company registered under Harper & Wild LLC. I didn't remember signing anything. I had never heard of that name. But I did remember Jason asking me to e-sign a few things just for legal setup a year ago. Formality stuff, he'd said. Emily didn't show me right away. She printed screenshots, cross-referenced loan numbers, took photos with her tablet, She created a folder titled Truth and hid it under a decoy game app on her phone. One night, as I was folding laundry, she sat across from me and slid the papers over. "I think you should see this. I didn't understand at first. I thought it was junk mail. Then I saw my name, my signature, guarantor. Total loan amount, $145,000. I felt the air leave my body like someone had pulled the plug on my lungs. I didn't care about the money, not really. What broke me was this. My own son had quietly tethered me to a financial bomb without ever looking me in the eye. And I had smiled at him at Thanksgiving. I had defended him to family. I had said, he means well, every time someone hinted he might be taking advantage. I dropped the papers on the table and covered my mouth. Emily didn't move. She just watched me. And then softly, "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom." I wanted to be strong. I wanted to say something wise, something motherly. But I couldn't find words. I felt exposed, small, and stupid. She walked over, put her arms around me, and rested her chin on my shoulder. "This isn't the end," she whispered. "It's the start." I looked at her then, not just as my daughter, but as something more. She wasn't a child in that moment. She was the spark I had lost somewhere along the way. And I had no idea what she planned to do next. Emily didn't ask me for permission. She just told me one morning over toast, "I'm working on something, please trust me." I saw the fire in her eyes, the quiet, contained kind that doesn't flicker. It burns steady. She created a fake Instagram account that same afternoon. The profile? A young college student majoring in marketing, interested in startups, looking to break into the industry. She followed Harper & Wilde LLC's former employees, one in particular, Jordan Cole. He had been let go 6 months ago, according to a LinkedIn post riddled with passive-aggressive undertones. Emily slid into his DMs, posing as a curious admirer of his work, asking innocent questions about the company culture, the leadership, the vision. Jordan responded faster than she expected. It turned out he had plenty to say. "Her," he typed, referring to Jason's wife. She ran everything. Jason was just the public face. He couldn't negotiate his way out of a sandwich order. Emily played along, asked more. That's when Jordan casually dropped the phrase, "money laundering vibes." Emily's fingers froze over the keyboard. He explained in vague terms, odd cash flows, sudden overseas accounts, asset reassignments. He couldn't prove anything, he said, but it didn't smell right. Especially how they used someone's name, an older woman on property leases and credit lines. Melissa Harper. Emily's blood turned cold. She thanked him, logged out, and began digging through archived records on the state's business database. Sure enough, she found 2 property filings listing her mother's name as the co-signer. When she clicked on the document trail, she saw the digital notary signature. Jason's wife had witnessed the e-signing. Emily remembered that day. The family barbecue. Jason asking Melissa to sign a birthday card for a vendor. Sliding the iPad into her hands between hot dogs and potato salad. It hadn't been a card. Emily stared at the screen for a long time. That night, she sat in the living room with a tablet in her lap and headphones plugged in. But she wasn't watching cartoons. She was listening to audio files. Earlier that week, she'd hidden a cheap recorder in Melissa's purse. She hated doing it, but Jason's wife had a habit of talking just a little too loudly whenever Melissa was around. And on the 3rd clip, she found it. She deserves it honestly, the voice hissed. "She's old, clueless, and too sentimental to notice. Perfect kind of liability." It was unmistakably her, Jason's wife. The recording ended with a laugh that made Emily's hands curl into fists. She didn't play it for me that night. She just sat there, watching me fold laundry again, eyes flicking toward me like she was trying to memorize my outline. When she did play it, 2 nights later, I didn't say anything at first, I just listened. And when it ended, I laughed, just once. A short, sharp, bitter sound. Then I cried, not because she called me old, not even because she called me clueless, but because she'd called me a liability, because she wasn't wrong. I had become a weight tied to my own family's ambitions, an afterthought with a signature they needed. Emily handed me a glass of water, her face expressionless, but her eyes were blazing. She didn't wait for me to spiral. She opened her laptop and showed me the timeline she'd built. Every financial transaction linked to my accounts, every signature they'd misused, every falsehood Jordan had helped uncover. The folder was labeled Truth. I stared at it for a long time, and then I remembered Paul Whitaker, my college boyfriend, now a financial lawyer based 2 towns over. We hadn't spoken in years, not since his wedding invitation I never responded to. But I found his number in an old email and sent a message. "I need legal advice. Urgently. It's Melissa Harper. Please call me." He replied in 10 minutes. We met the next morning at a quiet cafe. I told him everything. Emily's folder, the loans, the falsified documents. Paul didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he sat back and said, "We'll fix this, but you have to be smart, strategic, no emotional moves." I nodded. I didn't trust myself with emotions anymore. Later that night, Emily compiled everything into a secured drive. She labeled it Operation Clean Break and sent a copy to Paul with a message. "I'm not a hacker. I'm a citizen protecting her mom." She showed it to me after it was sent. I was stunned, moved, a little afraid. We sat by the stove that night with mugs of cocoa. She curled into my side like she hadn't done since she was 9. I ran a hand through her hair. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. She didn't speak. I added, "But I'm scared too, not of them, of what this might do to you." She looked up at me. "I'm not doing this for revenge, Mom. I'm doing it so we can breathe again." And for the first time in years, I believed that might actually be possible. The invitation never came. Not that I expected it. But still, when the 5th anniversary of Jason and his wife's wedding rolled around, and photos of the rehearsal dinner began to flood social media, smiling faces, toasts raised, candles lit, I felt the familiar sting of erasure. Emily didn't say a word. She just sat beside me on the couch, laptop open, headphones in, her face unreadable. I thought she was watching a movie. She wasn't. The rehearsal dinner was being held at a fancy rooftop venue downtown. Jason's wife had planned it to perfection. Champagne walls, live jazz quartet, handwritten place cards in calligraphy. The whole family was there, except me. That night, 30 minutes into the dinner, a video was emailed to the event's shared inbox. Jason's wife loved collecting photos, so she'd created a group account for family to drop in memories. That was where Emily sent it. The subject line read, "A gift from someone you forgot." They projected it on the main screen, thinking it was a sweet tribute. At first, it was. It opened with childhood photos, Jason as a baby, Melissa holding him in a hospital bed, his first birthday cake, a homemade Halloween costume. Then the footage changed. Documents, screenshots, spreadsheets, audio clips. The voices were unmistakable. Jason's wife saying, "She's too clueless to know she's collateral." Jason laughing in the background. Loan agreements with Melissa's forged signature. Property listings, transactions, timelines. Music played softly beneath it all, an eerie, instrumental lullaby. It ended with a black screen and white text. "To the man who called me selfish, to the woman who used my name. This is my wedding gift to you. From the woman you erased." Jason froze. His wife's glass slipped from her fingers, shattered on the floor. No one spoke. Then she stood up quietly and walked out. A single tear slid down her cheek, but she didn't look back. The room erupted into whispers. Jason tried to laugh it off, stammering that it was doctored, a prank, probably a bitter ex-friend. But the evidence was too detailed, too real. That video didn't just break the moment, it cracked open the entire facade. 2 days later, the IRS showed up. Paul called to let us know. Investigations had begun. Jason was placed on administrative leave by his board. Investors backed out overnight. Journalists were circling, and the family, silent, not a single text. Melissa had disappeared again, but this time it was because no one knew what to say. 3 days after the video, Melissa was walking to the mailbox when she saw Jason's wife waiting near her car. She didn't look angry, just exhausted. Melissa stopped a few feet away. "You're bold," she said. "I'm desperate," the woman replied. They stood in silence for a while. Finally, Melissa asked, "Why did you do it? You had everything." Her voice cracked. "You think I had everything?" She stepped closer. "Let me tell you something you clearly don't know. When I was 19, I got pregnant. Jason's parents said I was ruining his future. They threatened to cut him off, said I was just another girl trying to trap him. They made me sign a medical waiver, told me if I didn't take care of it, I'd be cut out of the family forever." Melissa's breath caught. "I lost my child," she whispered. "No," Jason's wife said. "I didn't lose it. I was cornered into giving it up. And I swore I'd never be powerless again." She looked away, blinking fast. "I didn't want to use your name, but they said your credit was clean, that you owed Jason for raising him, that you'd never know." Melissa felt the world tilt slightly. The revenge, the cruelty. It had roots she hadn't seen. Not excuses, but echoes, cycles. She saw it now. The Harper family didn't destroy with fists. They broke people with silence, manipulation, and shame. They made you feel small enough to volunteer your own erasure. "You used me," Melissa said softly. "I did," the woman admitted, "but I didn't start it." Melissa didn't respond. She didn't scream. She simply turned and walked back into her house, closed the door, and leaned against it as tears welled up in her eyes. Inside, Emily was waiting at the kitchen table. "She came?" she asked. Melissa nodded. "Did she explain?" Melissa sat down, her voice hollow. "She did, and for the first time, I didn't just see a villain. I saw another version of me, one who never got a second chance." Emily was quiet. "You're not going to forgive her, are you?" she asked. "No," Melissa said, "but I'm not going to become her either." Outside, the wind picked up, scattering leaves across the lawn. Inside, a mother and daughter sat in the stillness, a new kind of clarity between them. The war wasn't over, but something had shifted. The headline hit the local news first, then regional blogs picked it up. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Single mother scammed by her own son, 13-year-old daughter uncovers financial conspiracy. The photo they used was an old one, me and Emily on a park bench. She's holding an ice cream. I'm mid-laugh. It made me look lighter, happier than I'd felt in years. A journalist reached out for comment. I almost declined. But then I remembered that silence had always been my default, and my downfall. We met at a library cafe. She asked the usual, how I felt, what I'd lost, what I wanted from all this. I didn't say much at first, then she leaned forward and asked, "Do you hate your son?" I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "I hate the silence that raised him." She scribbled something down, then asked what I meant. I looked out the window, watching kids chase each other across the grass. I grew up in a house where being quiet meant survival, where speaking up meant being dramatic. I passed that on without meaning to. I thought being a good mother meant swallowing pain, enduring, making things easier for everyone else. I turned back to her. But I was wrong. Silence isn't strength, it's submission. Her article quoted me almost exactly. It went viral. People messaged from all over the country, women mostly. Some told stories. Others just said thank you. A few wrote, "You gave me permission to stop apologizing." Jason reached out the following week. He asked to meet in person. Just the two of us. I said no. He sent a long message instead. Apologies, explanations, excuses dressed in grief. He said he didn't know the full extent, that he was manipulated, that he was scared of failing in front of me. I replied once, "You didn't lose me, Jason. You threw me away." Then I blocked his number. A few days later, I went to the old church near my childhood home. It wasn't Sunday, no service, just wooden pews and filtered light. I sat near the back and stared at the altar for what felt like hours, not praying, not thinking, just being. The silence felt different now, not heavy, not hollow, just still. Healing didn't roar, it whispered. By spring, Emily got her letter, full scholarship to a tech institute across the country. She ran into the kitchen waving the envelope, eyes wide with disbelief. We danced in the living room until we were out of breath. That night, she said, "I'm going, but I'm taking you with me, not physically, but in everything I do." I smiled. That's all I need. With Emily preparing to leave, I knew I had to find something that was mine. Not motherhood, not survival, something for me. So I started a workshop, small, online, free. I called it No More Martyrs, Reclaiming Power in Toxic Families. At first, only a few people joined, then word spread. Within months, I was hosting live talks, guest panels, support groups. Women came with broken voices and bruised spirits. I didn't fix them. I didn't have to. I just reminded them they weren't alone. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. Jason had returned the money. All of it, every cent, no note, no explanation, just a check and a transfer receipt. I stared at it for a long time, then I took it to the bank and transferred the full amount to a nonprofit that helps single mothers escape financial abuse. When the teller asked if I wanted to include my name, I said no. "This isn't about me," I said. "It's about undoing the silence." A week before Emily left for college, we sat on the porch, sharing tea and an unusually cool summer evening. She was quieter than usual. Then she asked, "If I were Jason, would you forgive me?" The question hung between us. I looked at her, really looked at her. So much like her brother, but impossibly different. Where he had justified, she had listened. Where he had taken, she had built. I set my cup down and reached for her hand. "I would never have to," I said, because I've raised you to never become him. Her eyes welled, and she smiled that small knowing smile of hers. Somewhere deep inside, something old let go, and something new, something unbreakable, took its place. We arrived in Vermont just after the first snowfall. The roads were quiet, the air impossibly clean, and the town looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. White steeples, red barns, a single main street, lined with bakeries and bookstores. No one knew our names here. No one cared what we'd been through. That anonymity felt like freedom. We rented a small house on the edge of the woods with peeling shutters and a porch that groaned when you stepped on it. Emily called it charmingly haunted. I just called it ours. The first few days passed slowly. We unpacked, explored, wandered. No calls from reporters, no awkward run-ins with extended family, just time, real time. I started planting things, tulips, lavender, tomatoes that would probably never grow in the shade we had. But I didn't care. The act of planting was enough. I picked up yoga again, not the fast, hot kind in city studios, but slow stretches in the morning sun, barefoot on the porch, breath sinking with the wind in the trees. I started writing too, long rambling posts about motherhood, boundaries, grief, survival. I posted them on a blog Emily helped me set up. It didn't matter who read them. I wasn't writing to be seen. I was writing to breathe. Emily, for her part, dove into code and chords. Her room overflowed with guitar strings, sticky notes filled with algorithms, and mugs of lukewarm tea she never finished. She was happier, lighter. She laughed more easily now, even when nothing was funny. Some mornings I'd find her on the back steps playing music. Soft, unfinished melodies that never asked for applause. It felt like peace, but not the kind that comes after victory, the kind that comes after surrender. We didn't pretend everything was fine. We didn't erase what had happened. We just stopped letting it define the shape of every breath. There were days I still cried, quietly, often without knowing why. There were nights Emily still locked her door, not because she feared me, but because some part of her still remembered what it was like not to feel safe, even in her own house. We let those feelings pass without needing to fix them. One crisp afternoon, as the first real snow of the season began to fall, I sat by the window and began writing a letter. Not to Jason, not to Emily, to myself. Dear Melissa, you trusted the wrong people. You gave too much. You stayed quiet for too long, but you also loved deeply. You forgave too often, yes, but you never stopped trying. And you gave birth to the right one. She saved you. Not with vengeance, with vision, with clarity, with love. You're not the woman you were 2 years ago. That woman was drowning and calling it devotion. This woman, she walks on her own. Love me. I folded the letter and slipped it between the pages of a book I hadn't read yet. One day I might find it again, or maybe I wouldn't need to. That evening, Emily called to me from the porch. Snow had covered the path leading into the woods. Everything glowed blue in the fading light. Come on, she said, holding out her hand. I grabbed my coat and boots and joined her. We walked without saying much, just the sound of our boots crunching in fresh snow, our breath rising in the air like prayers. She started humming one of her unfinished songs, and I joined in, off-key. She laughed. I laughed louder. The wind picked up, scattering snowflakes into our hair, our eyelashes. For the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I felt whole, a mother, a woman, a survivor. And in that moment, with my daughter beside me, Laughter echoing into the trees, I realized this was what freedom really sounded like.